Welcome to Around the Grounds with Chocco, and tonight, well, we have a very special guest. She's been involved in community football now for a long time, now has a role with the South Australian Football League, but played a massive part in our region, and I speak of Lisa Faraci, better known as Faraci. Welcome to the program.
So excited to be here. It's like a massive reunion, isn't it, for us too?
Yeah, it has.
Serious.
Look, it's great to have you on board purely because of the fact you've played a real pinnacle part in terms of community football, particularly up in this region, and we'll have a bit of a chat about it and talk about your involvement. But Faraci, how did it all start? You've been involved, you were involved with the Warraneen Footy Club for years, but how did it start and how did you get involved?
Well, I guess I grew up in a household where my parents were heavily involved in sport, and I went to Warraneen as a 15-year-old, followed my great friend Nadine Jennings out there. Phil Jennings is the stalwart of the Warraneen community. I was playing Resies at the time, I think, still. Went to uni, used to travel back for netball, and then moved back to Swan Hill and started coaching A grade. And then from there, really just progressed into sports administration with the netball club. And could see that there was a need for us to align with the footy club more. It became obvious that, we needed to work more closely together, and footy obviously had more money than netball, and Tracy Merritt was very good in getting us new netball courts and relocating us over the other side of the ground, which I think was a huge step in bringing those two clubs together. So she probably taught me a lot about how to collaborate with people and try and find common ground, because netball and football weren't necessarily aligned back then. That was the mid-90s, I think, from memory. Well, no, 2000, I can't remember. Anyway, so there, she sort of taught me, and then from there progressed into the netball executive and then presidency, and then started talking to people about aligning footy and netball properly, and moved into the footy committee and then into the football presidency. So it was really just a case of I had a passion for sports administration. I'm not Jane Stockey or Debbie Beasy. I can't run a canteen or do some of the things that those people do, because that takes a special skill level. I can spin crap though and talk to people. So core skills and listen to people. So yeah.
And you did mention that, you started off in the netball, but then obviously found a passion to get involved in footy, and you were the first female club president in the league. And was that a difficult transition to get involved, being female and being part of, how can you say, football can be a very male hostile environment, but for a female to be involved and have that type of leadership role, how did you find it?
Well, I'm still in that today. So I quite often walk into a room and I'm still the only female in the room, which can be really challenging, and you have to constantly prove yourself and be prepared, be well researched, but be prepared to listen to people too. So it can be difficult. I think things have progressed a long way from when I first started out, which is really good. But I think with working with men, it was really interesting because you come from an all-female environment with a netball club, but with footy it's very different. And you come with a different skill set, which they're willing to work with you with. So I've got a lot of support, and I wasn't afraid to ring up other presidents, like the Tintinda president or Lelbert president or the Swan Hill president, and say, I need help here, what do I do? So I think having a level of vulnerability as well, and then you find common ground, because instead of clubs being, well, we're the best club out here and we've got it all right, we started to talk about what the real issues were and how do we try and grow participation, how do we grow our clubs, and recognise that part of the gap there was actually around footy and netball alignment. And then juniors came into it as well during my time, which was really critical for us to bring our junior teams along. And I remember going to one meeting, and the first time we met with the junior footy club, and someone had said to me, do you want protection? So I was going to have 20 blokes in a room and they were worried that I'd get yelled and screamed at, but that didn't happen. There was hostility. And I listened for an hour and I said, okay, so everyone's had their say, now how are we going to move forward? So that's generally my approach. Let everyone have their say and then work out what the next steps are going to be. So I think if you're willing to listen and try and find solutions together, it's the way forward, which is how I just everything I learned at Warranane Footy Netball Club and with working with the league, I now apply in my day-to-day job. And that was my key takeout from Warranane was when I left Swan Hill, how do I get paid to do the things that I was doing when I was actually at the footy club? So the footy club really gave me a really strong sense of grounding around sports administration. It's now basically led to this career. Taken a few hooks and turns to get there, but this is where we've ended up. And that's all to the Warranane Footy Club and the Central Murray League and people like yourself, people like Grant Jones, people who are willing to just give me a go and help me along the way and listen to me and be prepared to provide advice and support without judgment, which is really important.
And you spoke about relationships and particularly community football and the importance it played in where you've started your career. What advice would you give any female out there who's willing to, put their hand up to get involved in a football club? As we know, and we'll talk about female football in a minute from a competitive perspective, but what advice would you give anyone out there who possibly might be in the shoes that you were in and want to have a go?
Oh, I'd say surround yourself with good people. So Wes Lewis was obviously at the club already, but trying to convince Gnomes to leave Tintinder and come across was a big effort, but she came across and she's had my back ever since, and that's been nearly 20 years. The same as bringing the Hogan family along. People like Grant Jones, who I've mentioned before. So having people that are willing to back you in, but also aren't afraid to sit down with you and say, look, you need to try this, or you didn't quite get that right. And you've got to have that support. You need mentors. I've had a range of mentors over the years, and it's really important that you've got people there to try and guide you along and are willing to listen. I mean, talk to Grant Jones about how many times he had me on the phone in tears during the years when things got tough. Without judgment, though, and the same goes, it's vice versa as well with him and I. There's other people at the club as well. Everyone jumped in a special way to provide advice and support, and you've got to be able to listen to that, but also have a core group around you that have your back all your time. And I guess finally, I've got a very, very supportive husband. So Matt's just been incredible in letting me drive change and find new ways to be innovative and the work that goes into doing some of those things. And he's always been incredibly supportive. I actually don't know how he puts up with me sometimes because I'm always off with the next, what are we going to do here sort of thing. So he's happy to sit in the background and have me come home and give it to me straight too, which is really good. Now I've got a 12-year-old or nearly 13-year-old who pretty much does the same thing as well. So I've got two of them at home now. So yeah, well, really surround yourself with people and be prepared to ask questions and show some vulnerability.
Well, Faraci, one of your key probably pillars that you created up here was introducing female football to the region.
Yeah.
It was probably, in a lot of eyes, probably people thought, crazy. What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? But seriously, it created the pinnacle for female football up here and started talking, and now the youth girls have started a chain of different events in terms of success, both on and off field, but also now providing more opportunities in the region. What was behind that decision and making that decision for the region? Because it was about the club, but it was more important about giving girls in the region that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just one of those people that gets really frustrated if I can see something out there that people don't have access to, or how do you change that? So, I mean, the catalyst was Luca Gallo, who was travelling to Bendigo to try and have a football career, and I sat down with her on her 16th birthday at Cafe 202, where all good meetings are held. And I said, we want for your 16th birthday. And she said, I want you to start a footy team, a youth girls footy team. And I went, okay, so let's get a piece of paper and work out what that looks like. And I said, if you get the players, I'll do the governance side of things. And she said, well, where are we going to play? And I said, well, we can only play in Bendigo at the moment because I don't know whether there's an appetite to have something in Swan Hill. But in order to be able to do that, these are things we're going to need. We're going to need sponsorship. How are we going to get players to Bendigo? We need a bus. So all those things. And over the course of 6 months, she did the recruitment. I didn't have to worry about that. She got the message out there. And I did all the behind the scenes, so liaison with the league, convincing even our own club, and that was a challenge because football is seen as a threat to netball, and that wasn't what I was trying to do. I honestly believed, and it's been proven since, that there would be girls disengaged from netball because netball's only got 7 aside, and that you lose kids along the way, and we didn't have that opportunity for those girls to go anywhere else. And that's so she chased players for us, and I did the governance side of things, and I chased sponsorship, and I'm not really good at it. People like Dean Moore, so it's kill that sort of stuff. I'm hopeless at that. So I did a bit. Talked to AFL Victoria, and then convinced the Bendigo Junior Footy League to actually let us have a go, which wasn't easy. So there's a lot of meetings involved with that. Had the backing of the league, which is really important. And so we started. We got a bus and we started, and we found a coach and we started training and playing, and we didn't have many skills, but within a couple of years we were back-to-back premiers, which was, that's a terrific story. But I think the more important story for me is you look at those girls that have gone on to have careers in football. You look at those girls that have been given opportunities to travel around Australia with football. You look at the girls who have told me, and I remember one Indigenous player in particular who said to me, I was lost with that before football came along. I was actually thinking about killing myself. That's the power of sport, and that's why I work in sport. But when you've got a kid that comes up to you and says that, I don't need anything else. That's it. Put Luca to one side and where she ended up with her footy career and how much easier it was for her to have a whole team behind her. Having a kid say that, I could quit tomorrow knowing that, because you've changed one person's life, and that's why you do it, because you've given someone an opportunity. And I think, that has now built into, we've now got a senior team, I believe, in Kerrang. The youth girls is going strong. The fact that we drew players from places like Balranald, I just find all that stuff really extraordinary. You think you're going to be lucky to get 10 girls, and there's girls coming from everywhere to play. It's just a really, really important part of the sports fabric in the community that needs to stay there and have that opportunity. And it's something that I'm working on here in South Australia now, because we have regions here where we don't have girls football, and we're still running on that mixed model, and it doesn't work. We know that one of the barriers to participation for females is actually having that offering where it's female only. So it's convincing people out there that you've got to give this a try, and if you do, the girls will come. So that's why it's so important, because you've got to keep young people engaged in sport. It provides so many social and mental and health and wellbeing, as you'd know, Ruth, and the benefits that go with sport. They're well researched. So this is just one offering. Doesn't take away from netball or hockey or anything else in the region. It's about also working with those sports, so those sports don't get impacted by what you're doing.
Yeah.
So really, really passionate project for me.
Yeah, massive story. And it's obviously created so much hype now in female football, particularly now at grassroots. But as I said, pathing opportunities through to AFLW and VFLW and so many other areas.
Yeah, girls like Megan Williamson and Eden Zanker that have gone on to play. Eden, when she got drafted, and I was sitting there watching that, Eden wouldn't know me from a bar of soap. But for me, that's why you do those things. Would she have got that opportunity otherwise? And the answer is no. Or, as you'd know, Rich, and I'm older than you, if you were any good at sport back in the day, you'd have to either move to Bendigo or move to Melbourne to try and facilitate that. And what's pleasing now is things like the Pioneers and now got a base in Swan Hill. I think that's terrific, because we never had those opportunities back then. So, yeah, the more that we can get things out to regions and show country kids that they've got an opportunity, the better off they'll be. Nothing wrong with living in the country. I actually think it's one of the best lifestyles you can get, but it's about bringing opportunities to kids so they see the full gamut of what's available. Because you never know what's in a haystack, do you?
No, you never know. And speaking of the haystack, because you worked your way and did some work with AFL Victoria, part of the facility process, and you're part there as your partnerships. But then you moved across to South Australia, and you're currently now the community manager for the state. Tell us a bit about your role and what's involved, and why you're so passionate and you love it so much.
Oh, I mean, why wouldn't you? When you go to places like Lameroo and there's 50 people in the room and they're talking about crutching sheep and how many head they've got to round up tomorrow and stuff, and then you're getting into the challenges of population decline and lack of umpires and junior participation, but they're just salt of the earth, and they all know the importance of football clubs. So my role, I say I'm the president of 176 clubs in South Australia, which I'm not really, but I'm passionate enough to say that they ring up and I try and resolve issues. So for regional SA, which is my main focus, yeah, there's some genuine concerns that are the same as what's happened in regional Victoria, where we have seen population decline, and that impacts on clubs, it impacts on youth retention rates. It means that there's more pressure to recruit players, and what does that mean for player payments and that sort of thing. So it's all this cycle of life with football, but we have to keep football going and netball because sport is the fabric of those communities, and that's why I get really passionate about it. I love it. Like, I love going over to places like the EP and hanging out with people in Port Lincoln right through to Ceduna, or going down the southeast to Gambia and, you know, the back blocks, because they're just real people that are passionate and doing their 30, 40 hours a week for a footy club because their kids are there and they're doing what we used to do. But yeah, they're just trying to keep communities alive. So my job is to try and help them as much as possible to achieve that and take the pressure off them. So yeah, it's everything from governance right down to, I don't know, I mean, there's critical issues that happen at football clubs, and when major traumas occur, like a car accident or something, I'll get the phone call for those things as well to try and help them out. So you sort of have to be a jack of all trades. And thankfully or unthankfully, Warren Eames exposed me to just about the full gamut of issues in the time I was there. So we had and you'd know, Rich, you were there, we had a really diverse, hard 10 years with some severe traumas involved with that and a number of issues at the club. And that's given me, I guess, the skills to be able to deal with some of these issues when they come up, because I could know firsthand what it's like when you lose a player, or when there's mental health issues, or even when marriages break up. So there's a whole range of stuff that goes on at footy clubs, as you know, and they come, when community falls apart, they come to the footy club. Like when bushfires happen, they come to the footy club. Like that's where they go. So my role is to try and make that as easy as possible for volunteers.
And you mentioned that it is the heart and soul of many communities out there, and there are obviously some issues there regarding growth, decline, and all that. What have you felt COVID has had, and what impact that's had on the game, in terms of, and I probably wouldn't have seen as much in South Australia compared to other states.
Oh, we have. Yeah, we
has
have.
it played has it played a major impact?
Yeah, so we know like volunteerism has had a huge decline. So across Australia, I think volunteerism is down about 66%. So that's when you've got a really heavily reliant sport like football is on volunteers. That sort of drop off is really hard, and that's what I've got clubs that are showing up at meetings, and there's 4 blokes running a footy club with juniors. Like I can't even fathom how that is. So people just haven't come back to sport, or people are burnt out. You've had 2 years of COVID of impact when you're constantly having to pivot on decision making. So whilst we didn't have what Victoria's had and had this long extended shutdown with loss of sport, we've instead had sports on, sports off, sports on, sports off, sports on, sports off. So you're constantly pivoting around what are we doing in fixtures, what happens to best and fairest votes, what happens to this game, what happens if it's just one team that's affected. We've got, a couple of border towns that are in Victoria. So what happens if they can't get across the border? What happens if they can't get across the border in its finals? And that gets really, really exhausting. And I've had league presidents in tears this year. I've had club presidents in tears this year, right down to just community members, because it is hard to be constantly changing what you're doing. It's almost easy to say, right, that's it, we're done for the year, and we'll worry about 2022. But instead, they've pushed through. We did have a number of leagues not play last year. And what's happened with that is we haven't quite got back in those leagues, back to the participation levels we were in 2019. So that's our focus. That's been our focus this year, and it will continue to be for next year. Because players find other things to do. If you're on the verge of retiring and you're out at one of those outer remote leagues and you've spent 2020 fishing and going camping, you're not going to go back and play footy. Like, why would you? Why do you want to go to 2 physio appointments a week just so you can run around in the ruck on a Saturday? So that's what we're trying to do, is build footy back up. And it'd be really interesting to see what happens in Victoria next year, because it's going to be a challenge. And AFL Vic are very aware of that. We're on calls with them all the time. It's trying to encourage people back that the bigger picture around the well-being and social well-being of people is far more important than just the volunteers and stuff. You've got to have sport happening. I mean, yeah, you would have seen it firsthand what happens when kids can't play sport. It's horrific.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully, fingers crossed, as I said, I know South Australia, WA, all the states, Victoria, like myself and many others are out there on the ground trying to keep the football alive and provide opportunities. But Faraci, thanks for joining us on Around the Ground. You're absolute superb to chat to. You're inspirational. We can sit there and chat all night. But, mate, congratulations on a fantastic career so far. Thank you for what you've done for the region. And hopefully, fingers crossed, once these borders open, we'll catch you locally. And
wouldn't it be great?
and catch up on old times.
Thank you. And look, I just want to say, Rich, what you're doing is really important. I mean, this is part what you're doing when you're talking about keeping footy alive, because there hasn't been football. So someone like you going out there and making this extra effort, which is the sort of things we had to do at Sanford last year, is really important. So kudos to you for taking the time to do the Around the Grounds, because it's just another way to keep footy out there in front and centre. So well done, because it's critical what you're doing.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
us. Appreciate it.